The wind howled like a hungry wolf, whipping rain into the faces of the two travelers. They pulled their threadbare cloaks tighter around them, pressing onwards through the ruined city. Above them, the sky was bruised with the colors of an impending storm. They had heard tales of this place, a once great city that had been utterly destroyed by a terrible magical calamity years ago. And now it was nothing but crumbling towers and twisted metal, haunted by the ghosts of its former inhabitants. But there was also legend of great treasure here, untouched for centuries, just waiting to be found. The travelers, a roguish young man named Finn and his stout, dependable bodyguard, Borin, were hoping to be the ones to find it. Finn tugged his hood further over his face so that only his sharp gray eyes could be seen. "Are we almost there?" he asked, his voice raspy from disuse. "Almost," Borin grunted in reply. He hefted his battle axe, its worn wooden handle smooth under his gloved hands. They had come to the city through one of its few remaining gates, and now they were fighting their way through the rubble-strewn streets towards the tallest of the ruined towers, the one known as the Eye of the City. The ruins were eerily silent except for the mournful cry of the wind and the patter of the rain. Then suddenly, Finn stopped. His eyes, keen and bright, were fixed on something up ahead. "What is it?" Borin asked, his hand dropping to the pommel of his axe. "Look," Finn whispered, pointing. Atop a broken pillar, half buried in rubble, was a statue of a man frozen mid-stride. He wore fine clothes, and his face was handsome, if a little haughty. But what struck the travelers as odd were his eyes. They were made of pure white marble, yet they seemed to gleam with life, like polished gemstones catching the faintest glimmer of sunlight. As they approached, Finn saw more of them. Half submerged in the mud were statues of men and women, each with eyes that shone unnaturally bright. Some were whole, others lay in pieces at the feet of their admirers. All of them were crafted with such realism that even the cracks and crevices of their stone faces seemed alive. Then, just as suddenly as Finn had noticed them, he felt a prickle on the back of his neck. It was Borin's cue to stop. With a grunt, the big man did as he was told, though his gaze never left the statues. For a moment, the only sound was the relentless drumming of the rain. Then, one of the marble eyes seemed to shimmer. At first, Finn thought he was imagining things. But then another eye flickered and another, until every single one of them was gleaming brightly. A low rumble echoed through the ruins and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The statues were stirring. First, their eyes glowed brighter, and then their lips parted as if in speech. Then their chests heaved up and down, and the eyes blinked. Fear froze Finn in place, his mouth open in a silent scream. The statues stepped off their pedestals, the movement stiff and unnatural, like clockwork automata winding for the first time in centuries. Their eyes, no longer marble, burned with a cold firelight. Their lips curled into cruel smiles and sharp teeth glinted between them. One of the statues advanced. On its head was the crown of a king, now askew, revealing a neck as gnarled and twisted as an old tree root. Its face was gaunt and cruel, and its empty sockets stared sightlessly ahead. It raised a hand and pointed a long finger at the travelers. From behind, the other statues began to stir. Groaning, creaking noises filled the air, and the travelers were surrounded on all sides. One of the female statues, her dress torn and tattered, swayed on her pedestal, her arms outstretched as if in greeting. Her face, when she turned it towards them, was beautiful. But there was something unsettling about it, like a corpse made up to look alive. The king stumbled forward, his gaze fixed on Finn and Borin. The travelers had nowhere to go. Behind them was the gaping maw of the ruined gate, and before them stood an entire army of the undead. And then, as the first of the statues loomed over them, baring its yellowed teeth, the sky cracked open. A bolt of lightning split the heavens, momentarily illuminating the grim tableau. The light caught the gleam of one of the statue's eyes, and in that instant, Borin saw what they truly were. He cried out, a strangled roar that was swallowed by the wind. They weren't statues at all. They were birds. Hundreds of them, frozen in place by powerful magic, unable to move, trapped in the forms of humans, or at least what humans used to look like before whatever dark magic had touched them so long ago. It was a horrifying sight, yet somehow beautiful in its own macabre way. The wind snatched at Boren's cloak and whipped his hair across his face. For a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare. And then the leader of the flock stirred. Its head snapped up, cocking to the side as it regarded the travelers, and then it let out a harsh squawk that echoed through the ruins like a herald of the coming storm. The rest of the flock stirred, their heads turning, cocking, their eyes gleaming with cold intelligence. In the flickering light of the lightning, Boren saw them shift, stretching out wings that were the color of bone and feathers that glistened like polished steel. The storm broke then, unleashing its fury on the ruined city. Rain poured from the sky, wind shrieked through the crumbling buildings, and lightning illuminated the horror that awaited the travelers. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. But just as the first of the bird statues swooped down, its beak open in a silent screech, Boren acted. He roared, a primal sound of defiance, and charged. His battle axe, raised high above his head, was a silver arc against the gray backdrop of the storm. His target was the statue at the front, the one with the crown. As he ran, he hefted his weapon, pouring every ounce of strength into the swing. Time slowed. In the space of a heartbeat, he saw everything. The statue's upturned face, the flicker of fear in its soulless eyes, the slight hesitation as it tried to shift away. Too late. Boren's axe connected with the statue's chest, shattering the stone and sending shards flying. The head flew off, landing at Finn's feet, and the body toppled to the ground, revealing a mass of writhing black feathers where its heart should have been. More lightning flashed, momentarily banishing the gloom. Finn saw Boren standing in the center of the ruined street, his axe dripping with black ichor, his face grim and determined. He looked like a warrior carved from granite, unyielding and strong. And then the flock attacked. More bolts of lightning split the sky, illuminating the dance of death that followed. The travelers were surrounded, attacked from all sides by talons and beaks. Feathers and dust filled the air. Boren roared again and plunged into the fray, his axe a blur of motion, taking wingtips and feathers with every swing. Lightning after lightning illuminated the scene, revealing for a moment the grim determination on the big man's face. Finn, too, found his feet, pulling a dagger from its sheath. Its blade was short, but his aim was true, finding the gaps between feathers and scales, drawing blood that dripped like ink onto the stones. Still, the flock pressed their attack, wave after wave of relentless fury. The travelers fought back to back, their movements a well-oiled machine honed by years of adventuring together. Yet, for all their skill, they were tiring. And as the storm raged overhead, it seemed as though the bird statues would never stop coming. Just when Finn thought his arm would break, the attacks grew weaker, the numbers began to dwindle. Finally, silence fell, broken only by the pounding of the rain and the labored breaths of the survivors. Through the gaps between the statues, Finn saw the darkening sky lighten ever so slightly. The worst of the storm had passed. Shakily, he lowered his dagger and wiped the sweat and blood from his brow. Around them, the bird statues stood motionless, their eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. With a grunt, Boren kicked one of the fallen statues, sending feathers scattering in the air. "What now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Finn looked at the silent flock, his eyes narrowed. "I think," he said softly, "we gave them quite the scare, but I don't think we can stay here. Not with them." As the sky began to lighten, revealing the true extent of the damage wrought by the storm, the travelers turned and fled, racing away from the ruined city and the horrors that lurked within its crumbling walls.